Hello, everyone. So welcome to MiND Stim. I'm your host, Jacques, and we're speaking to Tania Gerard, ADHD
Hello.
UK Ambassador. You are a TEDx speaker, neurodiversity advocate, wear many hats, and we'll dive into that.
I am a neurodiversity trainer and accessible marketing consultant. I am a brand new TEDx speaker. I have ADHD and autism, and I am the owner of Tania Gerard Digital, which is a neurodiversity training and accessible marketing consultancy here in Leicester. Yeah, just super happy and excited to be here. Yeah, it's going to be a great little chat, I think.
I wanted to just really jump in because you were talking about obviously diagnosed initially with ADHD in your childhood and then autism quite recently. You were 25.
Yep, 25. It was interesting journey being and some people say, oh, you've been really lucky to be diagnosed as a child with ADHD, and it wasn't really the case. So I'm 31. So at the time I was diagnosed with ADHD about 6, maybe 7. And the research was barely there. They had the problem child kind of stigma labels all over the place. But I knew it wasn't just ADHD. I knew there was something else, but I couldn't obviously quite put my finger on it. So years later, I had the privilege of going for a private diagnosis where I was told at 25 I had autism. And it was, as soon as I heard it, I was like, yep. That's it. I have sensory issues. This is how I feel about lighting. This is how I feel about touch and taste and smell and certain things on my plate. And I was like, oh my God, yes, it's autism. You kind of then naturally think about what's happened previously in your life. And it's like, oh, that conversation went like that because I was triggered by this and this and this. And that date didn't work well because I was affected with the lighting. I'd had a long day at work and that's how I felt at dinner. So it's those kind of like little small events that like built up.
So a few things I'll just touch on that really quickly, because I'd love to hear about what that presented like. But that does really jive with me in terms of when I was diagnosed. It's not like an aha moment. Yes. And then, the heavens beam down and you're everything's great. It was, relief and grief. So grieving kind of, why wasn't that the case? I was advocating for myself. I thought that if I actually really questioned these things, everyone around me didn't recognize it. You recontextualize, don't you? So you go, actually, of course, that's why that happened. I wasn't crazy and I wasn't lazy or whatever that may be. So when you were at school, you said you've got your stereotypical presentation of ADHD. Was there quite a gap?
In terms of, do you mean like in terms of like stigma as like a child, or so?
Like, because you got diagnosed, so they would have recognized some kind of behavior, I guess, or traits. How did that come to be?
My mum likes telling this story, but the first signs were at nursery. And she waited a couple of years to get me for the diagnosis. I went from nursery to nursery because I was, misunderstood. I was energetic. I was like picking children up as well. So having that sensory kind of hugging feeling as well, which was obviously what I was trying to do to self-regulate. I know that now, but there's a story she likes saying, which is I knew you were special and it possibly was ADHD because I was doing like the great escape with children. So I kept helping them escape over the wall. And it's like, go, go, go. And then my mum was like, yeah, there's summer, that's it. There's summer going on here. And then about a couple of years later.
That's industrious, isn't it, really? That's amazing. So I was thinking,
it's not normal.
But
normal
that's
doesn't
the thing,
exist,
right?
But yeah.
So when I was a kid, I was really quiet. I couldn't make eye contact with people. I just was ages behind in my my kind of being vocal, really speaking, right? It was really stigmatized growing up. Nobody had a clue. There was no screening in school. Nobody had a clue. And we're very similar ages, so I doubt it would have been much different across the country. I was just thinking, you read my mind, that now thinking back, that was a sensory,
like
kind
self-regulating,
of self-soothing, almost like stim. So was there any other things that you felt like you did that almost would mask or would be a coping mechanism?
I think because the relationship with teachers growing up as well, because not to their fault, but because the education of neurodiversity just wasn't there, or it was kind of like it still is in some areas, like a tick box, sadly. It wasn't until I was a little bit older where one of the teachers just sat me down, who literally said, "Are you okay? What do you need? Why are you getting angry? What's with the outbursts? Like, what do you need in the classroom?" And it was the first times like an adult had actually asked me, "I see you, I hear you. Let's make it work, because you're a very bright young girl. You're getting the grades in, in coursework and stuff. When you take yourself away out of the classroom, your grades are amazing. When you're in the classroom, they're very poor. So let's figure it out." And that kind of was life changing, because someone was seeing me for me. I wasn't the problem child. I wasn't a disturbance. I wasn't an issue. I wasn't being sent to another room to get out of the way. Like, someone had sat me down and just said, "I see you. What can we do?" So there was that side of it as well. And then he taught me something which has always stuck with me, which in terms of ADHD, it is like having that extra ball of energy. So that extra, like Pokemon ball, maybe. So it's kind of like, what are you going to use that ball for? You've got this extra special thing about you. So at that time, because I had so much energy, I put it into sports. I did like a lot of cross country and like high jumping at school and in gym and stuff like that. So I used it for sports. Some people use it into more education and focusing and getting up knowledge, etc. So always remember that you have this extra ball of specialness. So what are you going to charge it into? And it's, like I said, it's stuck with me forever.
Number one, it's really simple. If you were moved from that environment and that had I'd say quite a drastic change in your ability to, just harness some of that angst really that you get when you're overwhelmed, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
That shows that there's environment aspects, and people always forget about that. Even in a lot of the diagnoses, it's always disorder. So I was talking to someone yesterday about oppositional defiant disorder. And if you understand the whole context, you'll get that, yeah, of course, it's because of environment and other aspects. But when you hear it on its own, it always puts a lot of the onus on the individual. And we forget that, like for myself when growing up, it was chaos, really small house, really loud. So it's not that one noise, but it's a cumulative effect of constantly. Exactly. Your sensory overload.
Layered.
Right? So it's layered.
Yeah.
So someone just realized that you just needed to be removed from the room, that you weren't the problem. And they were looking behind what the presentation was. And then the ball of energy, I've never heard of it like that. I would say for me, technically everyone I think has about the same focus overall, but I think that what it is a hyper focus. It's like a really short, like rocket of just constant focus, like amazing ability to retain information or whatever that is. But what happened with me, because I had all these sensory overloads and was invalidated a lot when I was a kid, and kind of eventually just brought up to not thinking that my boundaries mattered, I developed OCD around those things. So now what happens is obviously the hyper focus is turned inwards to all the wrong things. So some people with ADHD, if you're in a bad frame of mind, or you're not, you're still working through something, that hyper focus can be a double-edged sword. And that's what people see. But I think it's really important that you said that actually you can put that into sports, because that's what I did when I was younger. It really helped. Academia, I did the same. And I'll use it now. Instead of it being like, when I don't have the focus, I'm going to push through. I just try as best as I can, which is not always perfect, but to move my schedule around those moments where I'm most productive. I'm trying working on not being guilty, because in those moments where I feel like a baked potato, I know that I've been really, productive at that other time. It's really hard to switch. So I was going to touch on that kind of guilt thing. Do you still get that a little bit?
Oh yeah. I mean, whoever says they don't feel guilty by not doing something when they really want to is lying. And we'll have different days, where it's like, I'll have hyper focus for like 4, 5, 6 hours, and I'll get a whole week's work done. But the next day or the next week, I might need a whole 24 hours of not talking to anyone, having a mental health day, having a sofa day, watching Netflix, eating a bag of crisps. I don't know why people are like, oh yeah, I'm fabulous and I do this every day and I have this. And it's like, no, you don't. But this is the important part of the education to say the truth and just be like, it's okay to not be perfect. It does not exist. But what you can do is you can try. And even if, having a shower is a win. Like having breakfast is a win. It's an achievement. Crossing off one thing off your list, even if it's just emailing that person back that you've been avoiding for 2 days, is a win. So it's breaking, I know it's the classic, it's breaking it down into smaller tasks. And that is true, but it works. It's also celebrating those chunks into smaller tasks. And it's saying, yeah, I did that today. Pat on the back, give yourself a piece of chocolate, and try and do the next thing.
I think you're very neuroaffirming in how you speak. It's an incredibly accessible way of coming at it, because I've realized that the neurology of this is only so much. It doesn't really extend into practicality and day-to-day things. You're always going to see a different scenario. So it's more about how you manage your reaction to that, I guess, in that environment.
Yeah, 100%. It's knowing you, it's knowing your triggers, it's trying to understand yourself more every day, and who you are today, trying to work with that version of yourself.
Yes.
It's just those little wins will turn into bigger wins. And I am what I would say a spiritual person. So I look at auras and universe signs, and that's been a really big thing for me since starting my service the last 12 months. I have looked out for universe signs. It could be numbers, or it could be a business name, or it could be a word or something. And it's got to me to where I am today. It's making sure that when you manifest, sorry, I'm doing an ADHD tangent, but when you manifest
I love it.
something, it's really important to complete that sentence, which is, I will manifest this and I will action this to make that manifestation come true. It's all good putting it out in the universe, but then you have to do the action as well. You have to help it along. And I promise you, it will come back tenfold. Just do those little steps and the universe, it's got you back, man.
You don't even have to be spiritual to really always pull from that advice, because I think, especially from our experience, you get so used to, first of all, negative self-talk that clearly over time conditions you to make decisions that limit really what you can do and grow. And so that manifestation is a real intentional and concerted effort to reframe without visualizing and really putting strong intention, especially when you have ADHD and you've got this impulsivity. You can fall into cycles of hyperfocus and all of the rest of it, right? It's actually quite a useful exercise to really ground yourself in what you want to actually attract into your life. So you don't have to see it as this aura thing. If you don't want to, you don't have to see it as astrology, but whatever that is, it's important. There is so much intangible stuff that we can't measure, but we know it to be true. Since I've been reframing my mindset from post diagnosis, wanting to scream at the world, to a more, let's look at this university now. That's happened in the past. Let's galvanize people that maybe don't quite understand it and speak in their language. It's a lot less divisive. I've met people that have changed my life. Never plan for your lack of potential in the future, because one thing in a week's time could make you. And so
100% agree.
That chunking really is day to day, literally one step at a time. And again, with OCD, it's like the perfect thing. There is nothing worse than being trapped in your mind. Most of the time, it's the past and the future and not the present. I spent a lot of time in both. You're just looking at this kind of more intentional path through, because that chaos can come in at any time, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I put a post out, and just the act of writing posts now and journaling and even speaking to ChatGPT allows me sometimes to process those feelings, that kind of emotional dysregulation. I have that delay where I'll experience something and then 4 days later it's hitting me. So by just slowing down and allowing it to land, makes me feel a little bit more grounded. That's what you just said from a spiritual standpoint. You'll get somebody who will say, look, oh no, that's all woo-woo or whatever. I don't think anyone can debunk it. You don't have to be dogmatic. You don't have to buy into an entire ideology.
No.
But I don't think it's something that people can say isn't true.
It is comforting.
An instinct that you develop. In my life, I've seen things unfold in a way that, to me, feel like that energy I was putting out, that person I was putting out to the world, brought that in. More importantly, your own mindset shifts. You disarms that anxiety. especially for someone where you feel like you've got a little bit, you're lacking in control with ADHD sometimes. You've got how
Sometimes.
this, yeah, exactly. It's like this entire week was built off of like 5 impulses that just got me from here to there
Yeah.
to there. I said that to a friend. Most of my biggest life moments were built on an impulse. And that's great sometimes. And sometimes that gets you in a massive rabbit hole. But what you're saying is really mindful.
Comforting. It's just something that I have found comfort in to help me reach my goals. So it is like, like journaling as well. And it's just something where because there hasn't been much belief in me, only with a select few of people in my life, like to have that kind of feeling of the universe, the energy is kind of out there for me. And I also do it when something bad has happened or a collection of bad events in like a week has happened. So how I turn that around, instead of being pessimistic and just thinking, oh yeah, I knew this was going to happen, which is a mindset I did have not too long ago, to be honest with you, a few years back. That's what I always used to say. And it's like, oh, for God's sake, like it's happened again. I knew it was, I planned for this, but it's still rubbish. I always say, okay, so this is a universe test. I am being tested with these bad things. And if I pass this test, if I work through it, I will then get something really good at the end of it. And 9 out of 10, like something does actually really happen, like an amazing opportunity to work with a client or like a speaking engagement, or I've had the most amazing testimonial come through. And they're the signs that you need to look out for in the universe. So if something's rubbish, it's a test for something greater at the end. That mindset has just completely changed my life. The opportunities I've had with that mindset has been incredible.
When you think about it, most of the things that we put off or we anticipate don't happen. Or actually, even if they do, are still tiny stumbling blocks to just behind that door. And so I spent, for instance, because ADHD, I had basically what they call a breakdown at 17. I know we'd probably just burnout now. But because I had this kind of fear of fatigue, concentration, all this kind of stuff, I would never know what the next day would hold. I would never plan. I never had a future. Yeah. I would never say yes to the Monday, because what if I didn't feel right in that morning? And so if you've said no hundreds of times and you think of all of the cascading opportunities, that could have been a different life. There's ADHD, but within that, we're all human beings. It's not about giving you the exact advice. It's more of a process. But you pick out your, self-soothing. Sometimes you need to do that. It doesn't have to be extreme. Sometimes that stimming is what you need. And sometimes it's being spiritual. Whatever that is, I think it's important that people don't feel that it has to fit a mold either.
Whatever works for you. So even if it's, I always need like a ring on my finger because I'm trying to save my skin. It's just little stuff like that. Like the ring could symbolize like my strength or something to someone. Do you know what I mean? Like without sounding too, like mystical.
Love that.
Or whatever. But it's just something, find something that gives you that comfort to get that task done or to get that goal done. And, you don't even need to tell anyone about it, like it could just be something for you. Like the whole universe sign thing is for me. Representing a ring for something could be for someone else. A certain song even. It doesn't need to be like spiritual or even religious or anything like that. It's just something that empowers you to be you, like your best self, really.
I think that's amazing. And I just want to, this is where I stand on that. And we can move on because, that's so interesting. Really, really will chat to you after the call about that, actually.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And because I just want people to just sit back and think, everybody in some way, shape or form, because the world is so out of our control. There's so many scenarios. We all wrestle with this chaos to find that little element of a constant for us. And so we might have that symbol or that, external thing that we hold sentimental. Why it can sound like it's very, I have things like that myself, a ring. It's no different to a football team and having faith in something that is outside. It's no different to,
exactly,
quite frankly, art or music. And and people should really recognize that those things are powerful, and the pursuit is not about fully understanding things. It's seeing that it works for you and having faith in that, and the process and that mindset that you're in is the important aspect. It just relieves that anticipation and you start to have a bit more faith in yourself. And then when you say yes 1 or 2 times, it starts a completely different cycle that maybe you've never had before. Because I spent 17 years in a row pretty much saying no to everything. And you say yes 3 or 4 times. And what you don't realize is when you meet that person that validates you here, and then like yourself, Tania, on that call when I was having a bit of a toddler tantrum, you helped me there. I never would believe I was at the pit of the worst, lowest of depression, OCD, ADHD hellscape. You would never believe that you'd get from there to here. And it's those little things that you said that we use as humans. We can't perfectly define them, but they just give you that step-by-step way of seeing a path out. I think you've managed that incredibly well. Neurodivergent folk tend to be quite hardcore. So when people say, yeah, you're a bit weak or, all of that stuff, I'm like, you have no idea. If you speak to a neurodivergent
like
person, you have no idea what they've endured. Trust me.
We've got so many layers.
When the apocalypse comes, it's going to be us and the cockroaches, and that's it. Like, there's no chance that we're going to die off. So don't worry, don't you worry about that. I just wanted to touch on autism, really. I do work with many autistic folk. The thing for me is it's something that people have to understand. It is a huge spectrum.
Yes, it is.
Then you can get such variability with sensory stuff, social, all of that. So I just was going to ask you, really, diagnosed at 25, how did that come to be? What were some of the signs? How did that make you feel?
So I seen my child diagnosed and I knew something was missing, but I didn't know what it was. And my entire life I've had like sensory issues like that. And with food on the plate, kind of like missing social cues, not really getting jokes, not really understanding like the theme of a conversation, loud noises. And it's loud noises in terms of, like a restaurant where there's different levels of conversations. But it's weird because like at a gig, I'll be absolutely fine if I'm in the social mood and regulated enough. I can go to a gig, but that's different from a restaurant. I'm literally processing right now. A gig is different to a restaurant because a restaurant will have multiple layers of sound and levels and conversations, and a gig is just the music and the lights. So it's a little bit more controlled. Used to have like emotional, and it's physical as well. A lot of people don't realize that kind of like having those sensory issues is a physical pain. You feel it in your head, you feel it in your body, you feel it in your heart with heart palpitations. It's not just what you see, it's what you don't see in autism as well. And one of the biggest myths with autism is that it's either mild autism or severe, and that's just not the case. But
that's the worst caricature in the world. I agree. Everyone sees it as a savant, the kind of Rain Man version, memorizing pi to 5 billion decibels or whatever.
Sanji.
That's exactly what my issue is, because if you've got those high achieving kind of ones that put on a pedestal, those guys show you all the success, and then you get the people that have profound challenges and they get overlooked, and vice versa. It doesn't show you the nuance in the middle. And it's just as simple as this. If anyone can imagine all of the different ways that we process social cues, well, I pretty much every variation of that I've seen in different ways. And then the sensory issues. But there's also being nonverbal, for instance. Not every autistic person is nonverbal. Some are. So you're talking about just those 3 aspects. I'm sure there's more. And all of the different combinations. If you spoke to 100 autistic people, just like funny enough, any human being on the planet, you're speaking to 100 different people.
You're speaking to 100 autistic people, yeah.
And exactly. I just want to say you've validated a lot of my early childhood.
Oh my gosh.
The noise stuff. It's happening recently because I was just told to shut up, basically, that put up with it. But no, the noise stuff. I mean, I didn't have a desk. I was in a room. I could pick up like this. If it's the differentiation between noises, sometimes it's then the emotional resonance of when you hear it so much and you get invalidated, that now has a connotation. And so I developed OCD, but I mean, I try and remove myself from the labels, because when you actually look into it, there's this like kind of triad of things that are all linked. And so whether or not this is an ADHD trait, OCD or autism, the fact of the matter is when you peel it back, that sensory overload it actually doesn't feel like what people see it for. You're giving me a hard time. What's wrong with you? It's a tiny noise. No, it feels like if the house was on fire and you were in that fight or flight and I said to you, you just calm down. That's what it feels like. But it's in my head, and that's all internal. No one can see that. And so you can get people saying, you're fine, it's fine. It feels like a nervous system shock. And if you keep going through that, that is burnout. So when people see burnout, you're going too hard, you're not going to the gym, eating the right food. No, sometimes it's literally a constant override of my nervous system throughout my body. And those feelings I had when I got into my late 20s, or just my 20s, sorry, I had this electric bolt kind of feeling when I'd laid out. It just literally, my whole body would just jolt, and it would be like I could see flashes in my head. And to this day, it comes out. But what I would say to people is, you can't just try to fix people or try to help them until you understand that the environment's connected. The environment needs to change first, in my opinion. And then I think it's around people that will validate that. And we'll say, they don't have to say, we can fix it straight away. We can do this, do that. It's just, actually, I believe you, intentionally trying to, coming from a place of acceptance. Sometimes, quite frankly, you have to choose your environment. And that's what people have to understand in the workplace is, when I'm in an open plan office, I don't mind if that's what you want me to do, but the repercussions you have to understand are that I have done a cognitive amount of work to cope that feels to me like 3 times the amount I do at home. So do you want me to be burnt out on the Tuesday? Or could you just maybe have a very quiet space where I could go for 10 minutes? So my former employee won't mind me saying this, but I used to just go into this is not even a joke. I used to go into the bathroom at the office and just sit there.
Me too.
And we had 3. So I didn't want to sound like I was just going to do a number 2 in every single one. So I would just like dart around. So I'd get a good hour. If I did 20 minutes in there, 20 minutes later, I must have thought, bloody hell, he's got something going on.
Yeah,
and I did that.
I did the exact same.
Now imagine the extent, like first of all, I'm someone, with OCD, ADHD, little things that, like, a bathroom is the last place I want to be, a public bathroom. So imagine how it will feel. It must feel in the open plan office. People coming up to me, walking past me, stuff happening over there. It's those little changes of level. And how I see it is, everyone has a filter. So you sit in a room and everyone's speaking, and you can tell somebody to, if you think about it, listen to this type of voice or that, you can pick people out.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, there's no filter. And that's why sometimes we interrupt. For me, I'm listening to somebody, I'm picking up the cues. It's reminding me of 20 things that happened in the past. If I hear one thing outside, like the postman just stuck a letter in and I was gone for about 2 minutes. And yet it's not like a lack of comprehension. Or you look at how much we're absorbing in that moment. If you want information in a way that is good for us, like you said, you get so much work done in a day. It's insane. This is why it's important to anyone, I would say, who's been newly diagnosed, to find people that have a similar story, because it will absolutely relieve so much anxiety that is just an added layer that you don't need.
We've got to talk to each other. We can't do this whole fake thing on social saying, oh, ADHD is a superpower and it does this and that and it's that. And I just want to address that quickly, because the amount of social media posts, the amount of like videos I've seen saying it's a superpower, it's a superpower. I want to address it. It can be a superpower on certain days with certain tasks. I think hyperfocus is a superpower, because it's not a normal thing to be able to do 4 hours on a week's work in 4 hours. That isn't normal. Normal doesn't exist, but you know what I'm saying. But it's, we have such a heightened level of empathy and justice. That's not the level that neurotypicals feel, So those types of things are superpowers because they aren't the neurotypical level. But saying that ADHD is a superpower is a load of crap. Because there's so much suffering we do go through on the other side with ADHD, with autism. We have to learn ourselves from the get-go. We literally have to create a map of ourselves and then be like, now, how do we get through this? There's so much strengths to ADHD. There's so many strengths to autism, but being fake and just saying that's all there is rubbish. It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't educate people, and people need to feel connected in a community of ADHD and autistic people and say, I had a rubbish day. Tomorrow's going to be better. I'm going to try my best. I've got superpowers. I've also got challenges, just like everyone. But it doesn't mean that we can't do things. We can't live independently. We can't work. We can't be our best selves. So I just wanted to address that, because I've just seen so much in the industry where it's just
it actually erodes it as well.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you said that so well. What people have to understand as well is when people are quite vocal, when they are from the community and they want to talk about their discrimination they had or invisible barriers, or it could be the gender gap, for instance, in terms of diagnoses. And I mean, that's a big kettle of fish. Maybe another episode for that. It's a luxury to not feel you have to advocate for yourself. Right? And this is why people need sometimes a label. I'm not a big fan of labels, but if I don't have that, how do I signify to other people like yourself to come into my life when I was a minority of one? Not like any other minority. I'm mixed race, but people can see it. And so I can, if there was a sense of isolation, I can point to something that is that distinct thing that's different from everyone else. When you're in your mind and you don't even have a diagnosis, you've literally lived in your head thinking, and I've said it, I won't swear on the podcast, but every single swear word to myself, I do it to this day. And I say sorry to myself. And then I have a go at myself and I say sorry to chairs, you name it. It's ludicrous, right? So the amount that we are experiencing, to then see that on social media, people saying, oh, it's performative, all these people and I'm like, it's like saying, so someone said to me, all of these kind of constant ADHD posts is a bit of a sign that clearly, people being overdiagnosed. So ADHD doesn't really exist, they said. It's like, if you're advertising water, that doesn't mean that water doesn't exist. It's like, oh no, they're just capitalizing on water now. It's absolute nonsense. And if you look at the way, for instance, the diagnostics are designed for women or girls haven't been remotely integrated into any of those studies. When we think about our diagnosis, let's look at it for what it is. It's on a very shaky ground. Mostly boys, even the cultural aspect isn't quite integrated yet. And so in any other walk of life, we don't stop at that. You don't go, Jim, that's his diagnosis, that's it. There is a lot that we need to do from schooling to work to really
100%.
start to bridge that gap. So the only thing I say really, just in terms of, so ADHD and autism. So first of all, ADHD, what would you say, like with hyperfocus, impulsivity, all of those key things, what would you say is a thing that's different than what the kind of conventional wisdom is, right? Well, how it's defined on diagnoses.
Can you say that question again in a different way? Because my brain did not commute that. I do apologise.
Can I just, no. Can I just say something? I actually don't know what I said either. That's where the edit comes in. That's the blooper reel. I literally, sometimes I don't know where it's going. And so I'm trying to catch my own. That's such an idiot.
I was following, but my brain just didn't quite reach the target.
I want to keep this in because I want people to understand that's a little bit of masking on my part. And most people would just stop. Sometimes I've spent a long lifetime knowing that I'm going to do that and sometimes go there and then come back. So what I do now is I go like that and then quick back and I'm just looping back. And then when I think about that path, I'm like, what the hell have I just said? But I feel comfortable in open up with you. I would say I was on a client call the other day where I literally felt like back to my 7-year-old self. It is interesting.
I've done it myself. I've
you feel like you're basically a kid that just wants to cry in a corner.
Yeah. And it's like, and I'm like, wait a minute, give me a minute. Let me try that again. So it's like, this is what I was meant to say, because our brains are just processing. We know what we want to say, but our body is, and our brains sometimes are a second or two behind each other. And that's literally how we're wired. It's okay to do that. It's absolutely fine. As long as we take a breath and we say, sorry about that. Let me just try that again. I'm just processing and that's it. And that always covers me in meetings. So.
Yeah. What it was talking about my life story from when I was growing up. And I think it was a certain level of
it's vulnerability.
I didn't realize that. I always rallied against the idea of emotional dysregulation. It's in the same way I don't like other disorders because it's like it removes the element of the environment and it abdicates kind of society from the issue and focuses on the person. But I mean, it does kind of also quite perfectly define it. I can sometimes get that complete shutdown in my monkey brain, basically, where I just...
Yeah, I call it gremlins or bees. Yeah,
mine's delayed too.
Yeah.
I don't process things when I'm on the call. And if you think about the hyperfocus, if I'm taking so much in, I'll need more time to process. And so I will kind of loop around a conversation after the call. That's usually the time when I have all of the insights and then nobody wants to speak to me. And I'm like, now I know what I need to say to you. And so
Yeah.
if they punctuate it, give me space and break it up a
Yeah.
tiny bit, I'll have a little bit more time to cool that engine down to come back. And so what would you say to...
And then put it in an email. Write it.
Exactly.
When you get to that point, write it in an email.
Exactly. That's what I do. And then nobody bloody reads
Yeah.
it, but each their own right. But I think that's the
will.
important thing. It's actually it's a tiny adjustment that in the long run benefits everybody, because you're getting the benefit of my hyper focus and the fact that when we get off the call, like you said, you got that kind of justice thing. But if that justice thing is aligned to a purpose, or if that hyper focus and that interest and even the impulsivity with creativity, if that's all aligned, oh my God, the work you can do. But what would you say to a client who needed to accommodate someone on the call? They speaking to a neurodivergent person. The client is new to neurodiversity and they want to make that person feel at ease. Would you have any recommendations for them?
So a potential neurotypical client talking to a neurodivergent employee. First off, I mean, the easiest thing to do is have that awareness and kindness first, and kind of have that realization that no two brains are the same anyway, but everyone is wired differently. So I would, be curious and say, hi, thank you so much for meeting me. Are you comfortable speaking to me on this video chat right now? Is there anything you need? By the way, and then give that safety and be like, by the way, we will be writing notes. So don't worry about notes. We'll send them to you after this call, or we give you permission to obviously have an AI and write notes, or you can write notes. And just having that kind of clarity, like we're going to try and speak in clear, concise language. If you want us to say less jargon, that's fine. We understand that the jargon. It's just can be sometimes confusing to hear it. If you want to use any tools and apps, do you see what I mean? So it's just kind of creating that safe environment at the start of the call. And when I do workshops, sometimes if I know I'm not 100% regulated, because obviously I don't know 4 weeks behind how I'll feel on that Monday, I will say right at the start of the workshop, like, hi everyone, my name's Tania. I've got ADHD and autism. A few things that might potentially happen. I might stutter. And this is just because I'm so excited to be here. I'm just processing. It's just how my brain is wired. I'm okay. I'm not nervous. I promise you. It's just how my brain is structured. There might be the odd pause. And again, that's not because I'm nervous or I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just processing to go on to the next part of this workshop. So it's just really having that open-mindedness, that kindness, asking what people need. If they are too shy to say, just be like, that's fine. If you are struggling, we just want you to hear us saying that we've got your back, and if you need anything, let us know. So I'd say that is probably the most powerful thing you can do, is just be kind. So yeah.
I haven't heard it better than that. I just wanted to pick out some things that you said that resonated with me.
Yeah.
You said something, because there's the whole thing was perfect, but the bit that people is really distinct from what you said that I really like is, we might not speaking jargon. Doesn't mean that we think you're basically an idiot. We know you understand. And I think what you're saying is you have to be kind and clear that you are accommodating. But a level of awareness, when you have that, it will be done in a way that shows that that you're doing it from understanding about how even it feels to receive that. And because for me, I mask so much that the idea of jargon being too complicated, I don't want to me, that's like, would be admitting that I'm an idiot. And it takes me time to advocate for myself. And I'll do that. I've got neurodivergent friends that have really brought me out of my shell. And in front of them, I will go, oh, it's just me doing this. Don't worry. I'm very self-deprecating, but in the safety that it's not misconstrued as me being useless. I think that sometimes what I've been felt like is it can go to the extremes. What you don't want is to just be ignored because someone was too scared to ask, but you don't need to make it a big deal. We are capable. It is just really a bit of a difference. We're not going to crumble, but just be a bit clearer about how you're going to let us into the conversation like you would anyone, because as soon as that happens, it will regulate itself. You can't plan every second of the call. It's amazing how much when you unpick that first part. Honestly, the difference between my overwhelm is 90% reduced because of that. So it's the start of the call, but there has to be awareness. If you don't understand, it's really simple. Just start, I would say, with questions. Ask before assuming is what I would do.
Yeah, 100%.
You're
have that
amazing.
Open mindset.
I know that obviously you're doing a lot of work and you're doing the speaking engagements, so that's going to constantly educate you. You were diagnosed, 6 years ago? Would you say that there's a bit of a growth period that's happened that's really got you to these realizations? Because I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, so I would say, yeah, and a lot of people don't talk about this, but it's also hormonal as well. I won't go too much into it, but being a woman and then your brain growing until the age of 25, don't quote me, but like this is something until the age of 25 with our brains.
Literally spot on.
Yeah. Oh,
you're
thank
100%
you.
right.
So, and then obviously being diagnosed at that age and then going into a new chapter of my life after that 25-year period, a lot of people forget that someone might know you, but they've met you in different chapters of your life. So someone who met you at 10 years old is not going to know the 16-year-old you. They're two different people. The person that you dated in university is not going to know the you today. We have different chapters. Each year is a different chapter of our life. And we should be growing year on year. And if we're not growing, then something is wrong. I'm going to be completely transparent because it's life. We need to be growing. We need to be adapting. We need to be not surviving is really important. So if you're doing the same thing for 5 years and you're not happy, it's only you that can control that happiness. So if you've thought about it from 5 different angles on how to change your life and they haven't worked, try the 6th angle. Like, just try.
It's a hexagon.
It's a hexagon. Yeah. But sorry, back to your question.
I love that. By the way, that was just amazing. Can I pick out, there's a couple of things that you can pick out that might be helpful for people to lower that feeling of, God, that sounds like a lot of work.
Absolutely.
The whole point is, if you're growing consistently, by definition, you've made a mistake right now because otherwise what are we relatively measuring ourselves against? I don't like this idea of scolding people and rigid, academic top-down approaches. You want to engender a space where, ironically, psychological safety is the worst definition or worst term ever because it's actually quite uncomfortable. It should just be called, group discomfort, really, because that's what it is. But you're comfortable enough in understanding those firm beliefs within the company, and that's embedded in processes a lot often, and how leaders communicate and are consistent, then you will just be able to arrive at those conversations because organically they will tell you what path you need to go. Because if I said to a team now, you have to plan for this eventuality, how many different autistic people could work in the company? I can't plan for every single one. I can't plan for the fact that, the room doesn't have the right size so we can have a quiet booth. But if you were talking about, I guarantee you'd find a way. I stay away from those that it's not an indictment on them, but it's not really my approach to throw these big drastic solutions if you haven't done the basics to make, not just so you're hiring, so to attract that talent, but that it's conducive to keeping those people in the workplace and feeling belonging. Then I don't really care about the rest of it. You haven't done that work first. But that's what I pick out from that. And you have an incredible, incredible way of humanizing things. That's what I was saying, that 6-year journey, I didn't know you 6 years ago, so to your point, right? But you sound like somebody who has really started to move to that next chapter, or just ended that unmasking very early stage of diagnosis. It's like muddling your way through.
Congratulations.
Clawing yourself to get people to understand. The people that knew you when you were a kid don't understand. Yeah. If you think about it, everyone in each chapter is a new person, but that chapter change for us was quite a big, it was like plot twist. It's absolutely your whole life. And then actually your previous chapters you rewrite. So for us, it's a real journey. And that's what
it is, a real journey.
Companies have to understand. Like you're going to get it wrong, organizations, because we're still getting it wrong ourselves. We can't expect perfect from you. We want you to just have the conversation with us and be actually engaged. And if you really show a willingness, somebody who's neurodivergent will get it straight away. 100%. Because I've seen it thousands of times. And Tania, you're just incredibly just adept at that, because I was on a client call where I was trying to explain all of that and I couldn't get it out. And it's how you approach things. It's how you speak. I feel I guess it's like co-regulated. Accessible marketing, right? So I'm looking at your LinkedIn because my brain's a sieve. And
Absolutely.
It's really interesting, actually. So, I mean, I've never seen such breadth of work. It's incredible. So this is the role I wanted to touch on to, because we were talking about, and we off screen, we did or offshoot, we spoke about you being from the Black Country as well. So you worked up, I guess, East Midlands and then Birmingham, Wolverhampton, all that, as a head of digital.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was that role? It was in terms of like a day to day and what it set you up for, because it leans into accessibility quite well.
Yeah. 100%.
Are there some skeletons in there? And right, okay.
Yeah, there always is, isn't there?
For me, massively.
Well,
I've got to be very careful about what I say. All I'd say is, why am I a business owner? Why am I a business owner?
Well, the thing is, I'll have to say a quick story, which is basically my career has spanned with bars and restaurants at university, and then after graduating university, I went into digital marketing. So I did that for about 8 years, worked my way up to the top of head of digital, as you rightly said, and then it got to the point where I had masked 24/7, not just in the workplace, but at home in my personal life for many, many, many years, pretty much my whole life. But in that 8 years of marketing, hardcore masking, shall we call it? And there was just a day where I just woke up and was just like, I can't do this anymore. So I had to make a choice where it was no longer being here, to be honest with you, being transparent. Yep. It was quitting and taking a sabbatical for a couple of months and then go back into the industry after a long, hard break, or quitting and learning about myself and maybe just seeing what's out there afterwards. So I chose the third option and walked into the third option, shall we say. And I took a step back and learned about my ADHD and autism, both in childhood and as an adult, which was quite eye-opening. And then thought, holy crap, I'm not actually alone in this, am I? So spoke to some community group and the research group. And then I thought, well, maybe I could educate people about what I know, because what I know now is something past Tania would have thrived with if someone had just come into the workplace. So anyway, I got some qualification, and then I was like, I'm just going to put it out there on socials. Like, this is me. I'm qualified. I'm using real world life experience. This is what I've gone through. If you want to learn more about it, cool. And so that was 12 months ago. And now we've hit some pretty damn big milestones. And yeah, I'm really proud, actually. Really proud of myself. So yeah, it's been a journey.
I'm just wondering, is my camera just frozen or not?
Oh, good.
That story is very similar to mine. People don't realize just what that masking journey is. I mean, I was, very, very close to the quit option. And I had 7 years. In fact, I was on a call, and I don't want to say this again, but I was on a call to a client and they were asking about my life story. And there was a bit where I was exploited for 7 years. It just was like, oh, let's not touch on that. And it was just like, it kind of felt like I was having to shrink my suffering when I've already done that. So I spoke to someone who's really close to me, really helpful. And they've got an understanding of neurodivergence because their son's autistic. And they just said, you just have to meet people where they are. She said, like, is there a different word you could say for exploitation, or was it this? And I went through it and it was like, yeah, that was pretty much exploitation. That's one of the things that can happen, because when you're told time and time and time again that either it's in your head or, it's not this, it's not that, you're the problem. I mean, I'm a 6'3" guy. I might have to take this out of the pod, but I had a guy that was like, literally by the end of it, had broken me in the sense of like, just, gaslighting, taking money, and then
had an ex like that. Yeah.
That's what I said as an analogy. The best analogy I can explain is the one where you could be a woman, it can be a man too, where you have a partner, they love bomb you at the start and they give you that thing that they know that you don't have. Because at home, I was at home and I was in an environment that was awful, like an absolutely difficult environment, shall we say. That's the closest thing you've got to acceptance. You won't take that job, for me at least, that has more that's more rigid and corporate, because I was worried about, because I've had insomnia for 17 years. So just if one day I was too tired, or if one day I couldn't do this, to me, that was big. So this person kind of was like, you can be a bit flexible. But then all of a sudden, as you've kind of crossed that threshold and you've found that probably the first person that's accepted you for who you are, then that's where everything else comes in. So when I support in my network folk that have just, even disclosed that they're autistic, the reality is that they are being discriminated against and the law doesn't protect them at all. I hear it every single day. It's perfect loop back to you said about that justice streak that people have. You see a lot of a justice streak in autism, which I've seen. It's basically when that empathy has been absolutely drained. It's so aligned to the empathetic nature of that person, so much so that when I was speaking to my friend who's autistic, and as soon as she wants to support me or she wants to support anybody or champion anyone, that is so powerful. She will have your back, loyal to a fault. But it's just, imagine that person's been let down 20,000 times in a row. You're going to be a little bit pissed off, aren't you? So that really resonated with me. And this is why really for me, the podcast is free therapy. So I'm just doing therapy for myself by stealth, to be honest. What people don't realize is there's such a gap. I've got people that they're being treated so badly in the workplace that they just don't care about the consequences. It's a really terrible market, and they will literally just quit and then not have a job and could be homeless. And it's a bit like your free choices. It would have been that severe. Same as me. I've had multiple times I'm like, I might just be homeless. Everything was life or death because it was actually that severe, right? And so I sometimes have to talk them down from the ledge. And if I didn't just give them that listening time, they wouldn't be able to get through the next day. That's how bad it is. And so when people say, well, there's services, why don't you speak to just the Samaritans? Or that has a purpose, but if that is literally designed for the absolute, almost like a pattern interruption when you're absolute at your wit's end and somebody who's neutral party, but that isn't screening, education, workplace accommodations. It's not going to impact the sensory issues. So you could reframe that as, look how resilient this community is. And you said you started reading books, and I bet you 100% most of your journey, you've got yourself there. And now maybe you're getting a little bit of a lift from everyone else. But actually for me, that's quite a common story. Most people just clawed their way through. Sometimes it's just that one thing that clicks to get you to the next place. And that's what happened.
100% agree. It's funny how you said about clawing as well, because I've spoken with other people and I've said I was in such or like a really long tunnel where I just could not see the light. And sometimes you do have to just go through that bad stage in order to see the light at the other end. If past Tania could see what we're doing now, she would faint. She would be like, yeah, this isn't real. And it's like, yeah, I didn't think I'd get to the age of 31. But I did. And now I'm planning to be as old as I possibly can, because that's the amount of time I have to make a difference to other people. So the more years that I've got, the more of a difference I can make in the world. So I have now found my purpose. And when you are in deep depression, social anxiety, basically a hermit in your house where you don't have that purpose, you don't want to do anything. When you find that purpose, when you find that idea, when you find something that lifts you, that inspires you, that's the thing you need to be doing. And it doesn't matter if it's, like TikToks or whatever, or like something that you think other people will think are silly. Don't think about them. This will save your life. So find the thing that inspires you and gives you the energy and makes you feel good about yourself, because 9 out of 10, you can probably make a career out of it. So just keep going and keep doing step by step, because you'll save your own life, but you're probably going to save others as well.
I'm the same, but it goes both ways, where just that little mind shift or pattern interruption, or just knowing to get through that one day has changed, and somebody's taken a job or they've taken advice and it's worked for them. Something like a TikTok that people think is not sensible or whatever. Well, I mean, there's so many things that we've said is sensible have turned out to be absolutely terrible. And I'm far less inclined to listen to generic advice that people have, especially when it's attached to some kind of like sales funnel, and it's one size fits all. And the difficult thing, especially if you're neurodivergent, is you're going to have to really tune out that noise and stay true to yourself. That's probably the closest 100%. I can give to advice, is almost an anti-advice. You've never had that time to step into your own space, really relish the ability to carve out what that is for you, then find a way to do it. You'll find the people when you have the purpose. Because I was doing recruitment. It was not me. I'm still doing recruitment, but it's very minimal. And this was all of my skill set. I've always been interested in people from a real human perspective. And it's not that I'm not transactional. I can't come at it from that angle. It's just the way I was. And so in recruitment, the truth is it throws up almost all the time like a moral dilemma. What people don't realize is you often are going, I know that that's wrong, but I have to pick this thing because it's the second bad option, but they're never going to go for this. And it just chips away at you. I've always been on the candidate side of advocacy. I just have that in me. Like I'm not nearly as bothered. And I'll say this on a podcast. I couldn't care less. Like when it comes to clients, I want to kind of engender, that interest.
Yes.
But I will not jeopardize a candidate's, just their future and their time, whatever that may be. And it got so bad in the job market at the moment, especially in marketing, funny enough. It was perpetuating, well, if I put this person in that process, I know that process is broken. I want people to really get a sense of that because it is processes that I think are more about, that's more inclusion than anything else. When you have cobbled together a job spec, and this happens with nearly every single client I speak to, and then you've got, a panel where 3 people or 2 people have never interviewed before. Mm-hmm. And this happens to neurodivergent folk. We then measure you on a spec that it is so rigid and so important that we have to cram you into that exact spec. And yet it was so unimportant that you wrote it yesterday. And what is the job? It might be manage social media. So why is it that the path that we get to there, we also have to rigidly define? Like, let's just look at outputs, right? And so that's what happened to me. I realized the recruitment was what actually was the door into realizing, oh my God, if it's bad for some people, neurodivergent people, it's like, oh my God, they have no idea what they're stepping themselves into. And I'd rather safeguard that. And I get quite protective. And even with myself, we just hired 2 folk to work with us on editing. And the level of rigor that I went through was probably not needed. I would rather over prepare and really make sure that I'm not going to be that person. To take someone's time in this market is so insensitive, and it's something that I found my calling. And once you do, there is a lot less doubt.
Oh, 100%.
And when I then think about it, you can look back, maybe there was always those callings. It's just that how they were presented to you or what was told to be an appropriate path just wasn't right for you, because you probably can be flexible with your time. You have more autonomy. It's easier to do business now. I don't think 10, 15 years ago, it would be such an easy thing. Now you can set up a website in a day. And so that's where I think neurodivergent folk are going to be maybe a bit of a difference maker in the market, because they've got more tools and more flexibility. And it's only going to go further that way, I think. So, okay, last thing. And then, I've gone completely over time, and this is an incredible chat.
I've literally blocked out time for you today.
You gave up.
I hoped we would go over.
Well. I once went 4 hours and lost the recording, but we won't talk about that.
Oh no!
Very good. Luckily, a very good friend of mine in business, so we was just laughing. It was such a funny laugh. But no, I just. For me, the 2 things really, I'm so fascinated by the TEDx thing. But before we get to that, as like a sign off, accessible marketing, what is that?
What is it? Yeah. So, so I'm just going to talk.
I'm coming with the hard hitting questions today.
What is
That's journalistic rigor right there. So bloody hell is it?
So accessible marketing is obviously marketing, but it's not just about text on the imagery, and it's not just about color contrast. It's about thinking about the neurodivergent user at every stage of your marketing, whether they're using the website, whether they're using socials, etc. And it's really important to say that accessible marketing isn't just about disabled people. It's to basically make sure that experience is accessible to everyone. So a little bit more into it, which is, it's about easy to follow and digest chunks of information, like bullet points, for example. It's avoiding jargon. It's incorporating flexible formats like video, like text, like audio. it's being able to understand attention spans, about sensory overload, about decision fatigue. It's about knowing and understanding that journey from awareness to purchase. And like I said before, accessibility itself helps everyone. But for neurodivergents like myself, it can be the difference between purchasing and doing a hell no and making your bounce rate higher. And with all of this in mind, I work with companies to make sure that their content doesn't just look good, but it also feels good to interact with, that's easy to navigate, that has correct color schemes, that have images that make sense, that have the funnels in check, to that content journey. In terms of inclusion as well, it feels like you've been carrying a full block of bricks and you just let go. So being able to show up as yourself without needing to mask is completely life-changing. Being able to talk to your manager, to trust that manager and say, look, I know you don't want to hear problems because you are super busy, so I have struggles. These are the solutions. These are the timeframes. This is how it would look. Having that open-minded hierarchy in a company is complete gold. So we spend so much of our lives in work. We need to make it a healthier, happier environment for everyone to be involved. So it's the managers asking, what do you need to succeed here? And actually following through. It's in the little things like flexible deadlines, friendly, fidget, open-minded meetings, being able to say, I'm overstimulated without judgment. And it's also being okay with getting it wrong sometimes. And inclusion is an ongoing journey. So not something's perfect. It's an ongoing relationship with you and your team. And the reason why I've just said all of that last bit was because it goes into accessible marketing. And
of course it does.
It's how everyone uses your websites. It's how everyone uses your socials. It's how people navigate. People with screen readers are looking at websites. And if all your imagery is like Castle 1, Castle 2, Castle 3, it's like, what does that even mean? I'm not going to tell anyone what that image is. So you have made it inaccessible. And I just want to say a really big stat in terms of accessible marketing as well is that in the UK, we have something called the Purple Pound, which is the disability spending power. Now, the last time that was recorded was worth £274 billion. So if we think about that for a moment, if your website isn't accessible, if your colors are not right, if you've got flashing images, if you've got blocks of text, if the navigation isn't easy, if you are not feeling human, and if you've got a bunch of AI content, then you're screwed, quite frankly. If you are not being accessible, and even by just not doing anything, just by sitting here, you are losing a portion of that money. So you're not only just losing sales, you're also losing trust. And that's not just with neurodivergent users, that's people with other
shift in awareness.
Our government report said there's 1 in 10 of us that are neurodivergent. I think that's a load of bull. I think it's 1 in 4, 1 in 5, because it doesn't allocate the late diagnosed, the undiagnosed, the misdiagnosed. So when we think about that pool of money again, that's a lot of money for your business to be losing. And I know I just went, but I
think I can pick out some amazing things. You've just said like everything that I needed to know, because it's what I suspected. I'm going to come at it from what you said last, because I will forget that point. When people think of that purple pound, they might be hard to see as lucrative because it's a minority group or it's a small section. But think about it logically. It's untapped. And so anybody that is actually becoming accessible in that space, the competition, the ability to be an early adopter in that market is huge, really big.
Exactly.
There is not a lot of companies that are really meeting those standards. Maybe they'll meet the web standards, but that is completely separate. And that's what I was going to get back to, because when I was doing my research, the reason why you won't see a lot of guides that I create or marketing collateral that's like, this is accessibility. If it's just the basics regurgitated, I won't do it. It has to actually get to the core. When I spoke to so many people who are doing surveys, the standards don't capture quite the full picture. That's like the base level. And even then, it's not always that it benefits everyone or it's always needed. But what we saw is things, just the UI in terms of decision making Well, that's what I experience when I'm on LinkedIn. It feels like hell to me. I absolutely detest the website and the app. Gosh, I'm going to get in trouble with the LinkedIn gods again. But look, if they want to miss out on, like you said, I think it's purposeful, because it does with myself. If you've got impulsivity, why it's difficult is all of these things are like a means in which to drive action.
Yeah.
But I actually
100%.
even think when you reach that threshold where people are fed up with that and they see it for the problem it is, they're looking for more calming experiences, especially the Gen Z, who are much more attuned to how they consume now, and they're much more likely to shift in any direction. That it's not as like kind of fixed. We grew up before social media when it was just very much tethered to an approach where they're not. They'll just move. Yeah, exactly. They'll just move. They'll just say, no, that was last month, right? It's happening. And they are very purpose driven, and being an established anything is not necessarily a guarantee of respect or buy-in from them. If you're an established company, you think, we don't need to worry about that demographic. Believe me, it's not just neurodivergent, it's neurotypical people that are being more aware, that will also see it for what it is. Because you'll see advocates and allies also think the same. So that was really interesting. And I think you got the marketing psychology. I don't think that's necessarily the right word, but the understanding of the user journey part is what I was about to say.
Yeah.
I'll give you my feeling of this.
Yes, please.
When I saw people try to make accessible websites, they just really heavily focused on like, these are the autism. These are the dyslexia colors. And then they'd throw them all together, right? And they would then go for the least inspiring, most kind of basic. And that's okay. Like a Wikipedia is a quite easy to use website, but that's Wikipedia. It's information. But when it's your brand, you're going to lose out on that aesthetic aspect. And it's not just that doesn't benefit neurotypical, because everyone, neurodivergent people like aesthetics. You just have to think about that. And so I saw like a lot of very cartoony, like simplistic websites. And I felt that was a mistake in just not going deep enough to understand the balance between all of those elements. And would you say that's something that you kind of go into or have felt in your work?
So I've seen a whole range of different websites where it's so my autism, I have a strong emotional thing with red. So if I see red on a site, like bold red, flashing red, it'll actually make me feel like a physical sensation as well. So it's and a lot of people don't think about that. It's even colors and flashing images can create an emotional experience. So yes, I've seen a number of websites where it's like really horrible colors, flashing images. Some even have sound. Some have got videos on loop with sound. And these are the things. It's all about choice and understanding your audience, understanding everyone. Don't pick things that you think are pretty. Understand your audience, understand your users. What do they want? What do they need? So take yourself out of it and think about the people that you actually want to have visit your website. Make it clear, make it concise, make the language good, make the images actually associated to your purpose, make the user journey easy, make the navigation easy. Where do you want them to go? What do you want them to feel? So it's a whole journey. And I know, like you rightfully said, like you can make a website in a day, but are you making the right website in a day? And that's the thing.
Meeting those web standards of accessibility, I could use CAG or something like that. Meeting CAG. Those standards, that document is a reference document. It's not the process. It's not a strategy document.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
you have to do the strategy. And if you're just going, I'm going to dole that out to my designer and you're sending a ChatGPT summary of that guide. And he just goes, okay, I got that color, that color, that color. All of the different combinations are important. And part of that is the user feedback. When you're speaking, if it's neurodivergent friendly, what we wanted to do is actually get neurodivergent people to actually use the website before we put it live. What a weird coincidence. I want the audience to do this if they get a second, is just to check Tania's website, because I absolutely adored it. They're more my colors. I'm a bit more of a pastel, kind of like those softer tones. I don't like really harsh. Red for me, I call it the LinkedIn red on a notification.
Yeah.
It makes me feel constantly vigilant and,
See, it's red again. That's red.
I don't like
association.
Red.
Yeah.
Right. So, and again, it will be slightly different, but there are some things that somebody like Tania will be able to do to make that compromise so it isn't, just boring, basically. And so if you go on her website, you'll see it's really intuitive, like good white space, good use of color. And it's all of it from font choice I've dove deep into this because I really enjoy like UX UI. I'm just not very good at executing it. But it's changed what I was not masking, but what I was enduring, really, because I start to realize that's why I'm being tense, because I think a lot of the platforms, unfortunately, are nowhere near what we need in terms of, layout and all of the rest of it. And I think the attitudes are changing where people want a bit more of a calmer experience.
Yeah,
and
good.
This is the time to do it, really. So just wrapping up then with TEDx, what was that like? You've arrived. What the hell? I saw it. I was just like, wow, that's so cool. I'm like, well, yeah, you're holding your own. Like it was felt. I got this thing where if someone's nervous, sometimes I feel like, oh my God, I'm nervous for them, kind of thing. And I was watching it. I was like, oh, this is just really cool. What was that like?
I really appreciate that. So, fun fact, I kind of walked on stage, and those first 15 seconds, I was just in an out of body experience. I was completely zoned out because I was like piping myself up behind the stage, and I was like, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And then I walked out, and those first 15 seconds, I'm not even in my body. I'm just talking. And then I kind of catch myself, and it's like, okay, I'm on stage now. I actually have to do this. It was weird, but yes, it was incredible experience. It is something I manifested for a little while. I spoke about it in workshops. I spoke about it in interviews. I told my partner, I'm going to be a TEDx speaker this year, no matter what. I don't care which one. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get my message out about accessibility, how everyone uses accessibility tools every day without even knowing it, how to look at websites and socials, there's different colors, alt text, etc. And basically just educate people by saying accessibility is everywhere and it's for everyone. All the speakers, all the team were such lovely people, which is extremely rare. No one had any egos. It was incredible experience. I hope to do another one day. But yes, I'm happy with the one I've done. I mean, that is inspiring. That's what representation is to me. If there will be somebody that's not at that point of their journey now, that might have been like, what you was at 16, thinking, God, that's never going to happen. Yeah, it does happen. We can't guarantee it, but things do often change. And that's something that I think people should hold, because myself included, I was very much in the pits of all of it, really. This to me is my TEDx. This is huge. I've got a little bit more of a future now. I go, oh, in 2 months I might get this, I might do that. And that is what, how important it is really to hold out for hope and have that kind of mindset. That was just really incredible. And I just think thank you so much for watching as well, by the way. I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching it. Another one I want to tell the audience, do you want to just say a little bit about your podcast? Because can I just, before I let you do that, the name, I'm so in awe because that's the name that I wanted. And then I went to do that and I saw it and I was like, but then you had the ADHD part and I was like, it's perfect. It's a perfect name. I love it. So the very quick story is I've always wanted to do a podcast. And on the beginning of my service journey, I was like, podcasts would be amazing. I don't want to do it alone. So I did some research on LinkedIn, found loads of different ADHD coaches and speakers and stuff. And I was like, I'm not getting the vibe. I'm not getting the vibe. And then I found my now co-host, Kate, who amazing she's so good, isn't she? Intelligent. She's so good. Insane levels of intelligence. Yeah. And basically I messaged her because I think there was like a certain post and she commented and it went on my feed and I was like, oh, this is really good. And then obviously deep dive Kate. And I just messaged her. I was like, look, this is really cool what you're doing. Would you be up for a discovery call? And then she was like, yeah. And then we chatted. That discovery call lasted about 2.5 hours. And at the end of it, I was like, I really want to do a podcast with you. Are you open to it? And she was like, hell yeah. And the rest is history. So our podcast is ADHD Founders Unfiltered, but it took me ages to find the right name. I wanted something clever and smart and relatable. If you just use the capital letters, so obviously ADHD is in capital letters, and then the founders with an F, and then Unfiltered with a U, you get ADHD FU. And that's on purpose. I did that on purpose. So clever. Because sometimes you do just want to tell your ADHD to F itself. right? And I thought, I can't walk away from this. This is the one. And it took me a few days, lots of playing, and I was like, yeah, that's the one I want. And
that's the best name I've seen. Like, I mean this like genuinely, because I was looking at doing like a series of podcasts where we have founders on, and basically I like it from the concept. I didn't even think like you're playing 4D chess. I was like, just
I do like chess as well.
But I play chess a lot. I'm terrible, like really bad. But no, I think the point is that it's I like the unfiltered aspect, that you're just giving the raw, and that's what you get. I want to say to the audience, like before we go, it's by no means not slick and super, really insightful with a lot of wisdom and life experience, and it's really funny, and you could tell there's a rapport in the room. And also it's professionally done. Like the studio ones are just unbelievable. Like that's what I said to you when you reached out, like, that element. And I just really check that out, because I think for anyone that wants to ever do something in this space, that's something to kind of aim for, especially for myself as well with ADHD. It's a nice platform to have a little bit more breathing space.
Yeah, you can unmask.
Does that make sense? You can unmask.
Yeah. Even though a podcast is professional, on our podcast, you are seeing a growing friendship. So that very first episode, we'd only known each other like 2 months, if that. So yeah, exactly, which not many people know. People think we've been friends for years. So
we're up together.
Yeah, we haven't even been friends for a whole year yet. So it's literally that start of the podcast right until modern day. You see a growing, wonderful, blossoming friendship, which I'm hoping I have for a very long time. But yes, she was definitely a golden nugget, a golden memory for me, and I'm always grateful for her.
I've had a similar thing. Most of my time on LinkedIn, I was just looking, where's the void and how do I get past it to actually get some human beings? And then I met a few people that are neurodivergent. One has an autistic son. Another is a really good friend of mine now. And as soon as I found them, they opened up this universe of opportunities and people. And so I would just say to people, be open, be curious. You don't have to necessarily go down every path and do every project, but don't shut those doors, because there are really good people that are probably a lot closer than you think. And when you write a post, I sometimes get messages saying, sorry, I just realized, I loved all your posts. I don't message because I don't know what to say, but I love what you're doing. And so you are building a community, and it gives you a little bit more autonomy when it can be so challenging in the workplace. And a platform like a podcast will bring a lot of other opportunities. Yeah. And more importantly, you get that for yourself, that freedom of being able to shape it in your 100%. Own image.
You get to unmask.
For me, that's in the kitchen with the router and these new pillows, and it's just all
fancy.
That's my thing. But I everyone needs a voice.
Yeah.
I think that if people can just find a way to get out there and make sure that you get yourself in a community of people that are going to champion you, you champion them, it's a really powerful tool. It is the first time I've ever had that. And so for all the rest of that time, I felt completely alone. And that played a big part in how I felt, probably more than anything else. So it's just amazing. Yeah. You're a part of the community now, Tania.
Yay. When I first started this, I actually didn't have a lot of support at the beginning of this venture. So I actually had past agency staff messaged me saying, good luck with that, and I give you 4 months and stuff. And I had some fake people come through saying good luck, but then not actually supporting me with anything I do online. And to be honest, I only had my wonderful partner, Phil, and our dog, Millie, and a few friends root for me right at the start. And it's only when I started getting agency clients and big household brands, people started to change their tune about what I do, which I found interesting. So in the past 12 months, I've learned a lot about boundaries, about both myself and the ones to put in place for people, about people psychology, sneaking out agendas, who is being genuinely supportive, who isn't, etc. Businesses, business can be quite ruthless, but it literally doesn't cost anything to be a good human, to be kind, to support each other. And honestly, when we do that, when we're kind, when we're supportive, we grow together.
I got one mistake wrong a lot of my life, is just the part where I let people cross my boundaries. I did the kind part, I did the consistent communication, always there, but that's an important element I had to learn, is that
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, you like myself, I had this similar situation where I was working for free for 3 months and just did loads of work and was treated like absolute dirt, basically, while I was running my own businesses. And same thing with, old clients and all of that. That is different. That boundary that you need to set is so that you can do all those wonderful things and work with all those
100%.
wonderful people with that capacity that you have.